Good morning. Oh, so many patterns are happening in this video. Yesterday, I went to a concert in Toronto with my partner and our friend Tyler. We saw a whole bunch of things. We saw 6 things. The first one doesn't matter. The second one was Cait, which is an instrumental band, which was actually really good and I think my favorite. There was something really whiny. There's something really whiny that Miles liked, and I just sort of blocked them out of my head until he came up with the 6th band for me. Oh no, I don't know what they're called. We were calling them Heavy Jonas Brothers. We listened to that, and then the last one was Dance Gavin Dance, which Tyler was pretty excited about. Like, they were probably the most impressive, other than like the fully instrumental band, which I would totally listen to by myself. I set 0 alarms because yesterday I worked, so I was up since 3 a.m. and stayed up till 11:30 last night, and I set no alarms and woke up at 11 today. So naturally falling asleep tonight is going to be great because I'm going right back into that work schedule. Today I am going to film a reading vlog because I have no footage. There is no footage. I mentioned earlier that I was going to a knit night, and so I did bring a crochet project to a knit night, and I was one of the only people crocheting there. And it was made clear that knitting is the superior art form, which I have to disagree. I'm not gonna lie. With the blanket, knitting, and like when you're so many stitches in for clothing, sure. For socks, do I want like lacy socks? No. Do I want a lacy sweater? No. Knitting is the superior art form for those. But I think for blankets, crocheting is the superior art form, because if you're casting on like 211 stitches, dropping 1 stitch, like, it's so much more work. Like, if I fuck up with crochet, I could just pull it out back to thing, and all I have to worry about is catching 1 loop. I don't have to pick up 211 loops. So my point being is that I started a blanket, and it was a free pattern online. That is really where the problem was, that it was a free pattern, because it was like an unchecked pattern, clearly. And so I started making it, and the blanket started veering off. By veering off, I mean it kept getting smaller and smaller. And I was like, what the fuck? How did I drop these stitches? Like, what did I do? So I took it apart, and I started again, and I did it again, and it started veering off again. And then my Oma was over for Easter. She stopped by quickly for lunch before my dad drove her back to the farm. She looked at it, and she was like, no, of course. Like, you're knitting 2 together at the beginning of each row of this pattern. Of course your blanket is going to veer off. But like, that's clearly not the intent. Like, it's not like the blanket was intended to go like this. Because if that was the case, fine. The other end of the blanket was ending straight. So somebody goofed when they designed this pattern, kept knitting stitches together without adding things. Like, because the intended effect was to make triangles across the blanket. So you did have to knit stitches together to get that effect, but if you're knitting stitches together to get the triangle effect without filling in the gap, you just get a gap where the triangle is supposed to build. And like, basically I took it apart, and then I took all the yarn because I was going to make a nice autumnal blanket. I'm crocheting with it now because I truly don't feel that knitting is the superior art for blankets. Now that I have tried it, don't at me. Or maybe feel free to at me if you feel passionately about knitting. But yeah, I'm just crocheting while I drink my tea, and then I'm going to read. And I'm thinking of picking up something else from the TBR pile. That's not really fixed. You're sitting on something. I have no idea what you're sitting on. It's fine. It is almost 4 o'clock. No, I lied. It is almost 3 o'clock. I know how to tell time. I have just been reading Shout by Laurie Halse Anderson. So I am about 60 pages in, and I thought I would just give you my initial reaction. Laurie Halse Anderson wrote Speak, which is a fictionalized account of a high schooler experiencing trauma. It was an impactful book. I remember reading it. I think I was in university when I encountered it. But Shout, of course, is it's her life. She had an interesting situation growing up. Her father was a soldier that ended up being sent to Dachau after the war was over, and just seeing like absolute horrors there, and drank a lot and abused her mother And like her home situation was very tumultuous. Her assault happened already in a home where there were a lot of silences. I think silence is the big thing. Like her mother, she got her period and her mother didn't say anything, just handed her a box of pads and was like, here you go. No explanation for why you are mystery bleeding. I guess there wasn't a supportive environment to talk about what she experienced when she did experience it. This is like the month of Emily Reed's trauma written in poetry. It's not like a straight memoir, which I think is an interesting choice. I can't decide if it's a distancing or a way to be maybe more raw and authentic to the experience, because you don't have to limit yourself to the structure and logic of like a paragraph, right? Like poetry doesn't necessarily have to follow a structure like that. So I can't decide if the poetry is advantageous. So far I'm enjoying it. And it's interesting because I feel like there's not a lot of YA poetry. Like I know The Sun and Her Flowers has been picked up by teens, but it's not necessarily intended for teens, whereas this is poetry that is intended for teens. It's fully in the teen marketing category. It's in the teen stacks at the bookstore, right? It's an interesting choice. I was gonna edit Carmen, but we have these like on and off again thunder showers happening. This house loses power a lot. Like we've actually talked about purchasing a backup generator. I'm really hesitant to start editing something and then have the power go out. I just thought I would take a little break and update you on how Shout is going, because I am enjoying it and I've been thinking a lot about the form. The other thing I thought maybe I wanted to talk about, which I will do briefly while I finish this row, is the popularity of my Lolita video. So this is something that I sort of independently noticed ever since I started looking into my analytics. But that is like Lolita, like they give you in the last 48 hours what got views and like how many views in the last 48 hours. And the Lolita video pretty consistently gets 100 views every couple days. It's an older video of mine. I don't know, I've never gone back and watched it. I got a notification from YouTube being like, this video just hit 50K. I gotta wonder why. Like, why is it that people are studying it? People are studying for exams, and it's part of the canon, right? So it's on a lot of courses. This is exam time. Actually, exams should be wrapping up right now for universities, right? So maybe people... But it's not like it cycles like just around exam time, like consistently throughout the year. The Lolita video gets views. And I'm curious why that is. So I was actually debating going back and watching it, but part of me is really hesitant to do that because if it's terrible and awkward, I might be tempted to private it because it is something that gets so many views and I'm like, oh, this is the impression I'm leaving, you know? So part of me sort of wants to leave it. The other part really wants to think about why. Is it because in the thumbnail I look quite young? Is it perverts? Is it students? I don't know. It's a thing that I was already thinking about, and then YouTube was like, hey, we're gonna highlight this too. Do you have it, if you're a creator, do you have any content like that where it's old but it gets a considerable amount of views still? Like it's an evergreen piece of content? And how do you feel about that quote-unquote evergreen content, right? Do you go back and check in and are you like, do I still agree with myself at this point? Should I remove it? That's another thing I'm thinking about. The Canadian A playlist I have, the more I think about it, the more I fully recognize that it was a misguided series a couple of years ago, but more and more that series doesn't sit well with me. And so like, do I take it offline? Do I, like, what do I do with this content? Do I leave it here as a marker of my growth as a person? But then not everybody watches everything. Like somebody could come across that series, have no idea how much I've changed as a person since then, you know? I think that's something that doing videos every day, being in my analytics almost every day, has me thinking about the types of content I'm producing, the types of content I used to produce. When I started, I fully intended to be an educational channel. like tackling school texts like Lolita, whatever. I was gonna look at the Canadian school curriculums, high school curriculums, and cover those texts, like offer analysis as like a steady thing. And then I found BookTube already existed and sort of blended into that and decided to merge with the existing book community, always with an interest more in education. Top 5 Wednesdays aren't as evergreen as educational content, and I mean, I'm sort of there with the Dark Tower series with what I want to do with long form projects. It's educational content, or as Hannah Witten just mentioned in her latest video, it's culture content, right? It's analysis and commentary on literature, which is a piece of cultural production. I mean, more and more I'm sort of circling back to what I intended to do originally, and I guess even though this content, like during VEDA, trying to make a video every day, hasn't really been demonstrative of what I want to do as a creator moving forward, I guess sitting in this creative place every day has me thinking more and more about what I want to do with the channel. I guess that's where I'm getting to. I'm gonna end the video here for today. I'm gonna continue to read. I'm gonna hope... It's getting dark again, so like we're probably moving through another little cell of thunder showers. But I would love to hear what you like about this channel, what you like about BookTube, what you're looking for. I don't know, I guess I'm just looking for feedback. I'm looking for feedback on the type of content that I make, VEDA excluded. Like, VEDA has been just a fun experiment of trying all the things. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below on any of the things that I've mentioned here today. I'm obviously going to continue to read. I'm going to try and quickly edit at some point in like the next break between clouds. Anyways, before we go, we have to thank my patrons. Thank you, patrons, for making it possible for me to play during VEDA. The noise is the guy who's like aerating lawns. He is pushing his machine around and singing to himself, which is kind of adorable. Yes. So before we go, we have to say thank you to my patrons who have made it possible for me to play like this throughout the month of April. I really appreciate their support as I work on this. VEDA has been an unintentional like channel therapy, content creator, reboot, boot camp kind of thing. Thank you, patrons, for supporting this. If you are interested in becoming a patron, the links to that will be in the description box down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Hopefully tomorrow. Bye.